talk to, everybody wants to know 3 questions, an astronaut, right? And so they usually come like this. The first one is, Dr. Harris, you've been in space. What was it like to travel in space? And so I want to share that with you, what it's like to travel in space. Everybody needs to have that perspective because of where we're going in space going forward. The second, no matter whether the audience are elementary school kids or even pre-K or 60-year-olds, everybody wants to know how to go to the bathroom in space. I don't know what it is about that. We're not going to talk about that today. And then the last one is that you've been in space, did you see any aliens? And the answer to that is pretty short. I haven't seen any aliens, but I do believe that there's life out there. But if you stick around astronauts, you'll find out that we're a pretty strange group. So that's the alien part of it all. The second part of my discussion today is really going to be about my terrestrial mission. So I had an extraterrestrial mission, traveling in space. Now I have a terrestrial mission. And that mission centers around the why that we've been hearing about all morning. And that why is, why do I do the things that I do now that I'm back on Earth? And that is to support young people all across this nation. Through not only my foundation, but through the National Math and Science Initiative. And we do things all over, and I'll share a little bit about that. But I look at that as my new mission, and if you're religious, it really is my ministry. Because when people ask me, what is it, out of all the things that you've done, that you want to be recognized for, I have to tell you, it is in helping young people. The very things that you do as a group each and every day. And so that is my message in a nutshell. And but I also brought some nice little slides. I'm going to step away from this. And I'm going to talk about the extraterrestrial portion. So I was one of these kids who was fascinated with science and science fiction, who looked at that little black and white television and saw Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin land on the moon. And when I heard those fabulous words, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, it was a giant leap for this little colored boy, that's what they called us back in those days, to look at that black and white television and decide to become an astronaut, even though I didn't see anybody who looked like me. If I show you my astronaut class now, it is diverse, it has people of color, it has women, things have changed over the last 50 years or so. But it was my inspiration during a period of time where we were, as blacks in this country, just fighting for our rights to vote. And now we're still dealing with those issues, but that's okay because we're not going back. We're not going, you can clap on that, we're not going back. And the reason we're not going back is because of each and every one of you in this room and the impact that you can have on the future, and that future, of course, being young people. So I also should remind you that I come from 3 generations of teachers. My great aunt was the first teacher. My mother was a teacher who taught for 40 years, and then I teach medical school and business school, and so I hope you allow me to join the fold with you as being a teacher. As you've heard from Makita, I had a chance to do all these educational things and to get me prepared to apply to the Astronaut Corps. So in 1990, I applied to the Astronaut Corps and was accepted. There were over 3,000 applicants who applied, and they selected 23 of us, including little old me. So as an astronaut, you go through about 2 to 3 years of basic training, and then you get assigned to a mission. And the first thing you do when you get assigned to a mission, of course, is that you come up with the mission insignia. So in the middle of this slide here, you'll see the mission insignia of what we consider to be a patch of my second mission, which was a joint mission between the Americans and the Russians. You see the depiction of the Mir space station, that's the station we went to, and the shuttle, first time that the shuttle had ever gone to a station. And every mission has a mission number. So embedded in this patch is the mission number. The mission number is STS-63. And so you'll see that there are 6 rays of the sun and 3 stars. But you know the most important thing about this patch is that it has my name on it right there to the left. You won't see that. And that's so I can prove to all my families and friends that I actually went into space. So what is it like to travel in space? Of course, when I was flying, I flew the space shuttle. I flew on Discovery in Columbia. You've seen the shuttle missions lift off many times before, but what you may not know is that these vehicles weigh 5 million pounds. In order to get that 5 million pounds in the air, you have to light 5 engines that produce a thrust of 7.5 million pounds. And I'm here to tell you that when you light those engines, you are leaving the planet and nothing's going to hold you to it. It is a wild ride. It is a fun ride. It is an exciting ride. And so we actually have 2 stages. So the first stage is when we sit on the solid rocket motors. You can kind of see those long things on the side of the vehicle. And then you see the external tank, which holds the fuel for the space shuttle itself. And so when those main engines light, they produce that 7.5 million pounds, and you get catapulted off the launch pad. Within 2 minutes of liftoff, we reach an altitude of 100,000 feet, traveling at a mere 2,500 miles an hour. And at that point, we kick off the solid rocket motors, and then they fall back in the ocean and recover. And then you have the external tank going on into orbit. So the next phase, second phase, only is 6.5 minutes. Okay, so for you math teachers out there, you probably combine those 2 minutes plus 2, that's 6.5 minutes. It only takes 8.5 minutes to orbit. So a lot of people get shocked by that. When I ask especially young kids, how long does it take to space? They say hours or days, 8.5 minutes. And so to give you that perspective, we lifted off from Cape Canaveral, and 8.5 minutes later, I got out of my seat and went to the window, and this is what I saw. Isn't that beautiful? Now, I love this slide. This is one of my favorite slides. You want to know why? Because it shows the nice curvature of the Earth for all you flat Earth society who are left out there. The Earth really is round. But it also shows how we fly, typically in orbit, upside down to the Earth. So when we're looking out our windows, we're actually looking up at the Earth. So here's my crew. And you'll see on the left side, this is the crew of the pictures that we took, photography for public relations to show a couple of things, our different suits. The orange suits down below are our launch and entry suits. They weigh 135 pounds. The suits above are our EVA suits. Those are vehicular activity suits. And they weigh 350 pounds. So I know as you're looking at this slide, you're probably saying to yourself, Dr. Harris, you are really strong to be standing up in that suit. And I would agree with that I am a strong guy, but I'm not that strong. So as you look at that slide, I know that looks like there are 6 people in that slide, but there are actually 10 people in this slide. 2 people, suit technicians, holding me up in the back, and 2 holding the other guy up in the back. Now I'd like you to take your vision and go from the left to the right, and now you'll see the same photo of now the crew members being on orbit. And I want you to notice our, I don't know if this could work, oh yeah, that does work. Look at our faces here, and look how puffy our eyes are. So this is called a fluid shift. If you sit here, about 1/5 of your blood volume is in your lower legs, held down there by gravity, and when you go into orbit, that extra fluid goes up into the tissues of your face, and you get the puffiness of the face. And this is all part of what we call space adaptation syndrome, how the body adapts to microgravity. Now, a couple of things I want to talk about here. This young lady here, Eileen Collins, was the first female pilot and commander of a space shuttle mission. Really proud of her. And she is my crewmate. You know, she is one of my, not only crewmate, but also my classmate. She came in the same class. And so if you look at her here on Earth, and then go over and look at her here, she gets an instant afro. Isn't that kind of cool? Now, I have a lot of funny stories, and I was trying to debate whether to tell this funny story or not, but I'm going to tell a funny story, okay? So, and the funny story has to do with the other female crew member who has long hair here. And Janice Voss is a physicist, and I was working on some experiments in what we call the mid-deck, which has not only experiments, but also has our clothing. And she comes floating in, and she goes to her clothing rack, she pulls out her shirt, and she hangs it right there, and it just kind of sits here, because this is microgravity, right? And so I started to ignore her until she started untucking the shirt that she was wearing, and she put her hand underneath the shirt. And you know, guys, when you see a woman put her hands up in the front, you gotta pay attention to that. So I turned to her and I said, "What are you doing?" And about that time, from underneath the shirt, what came her bra. And I think she did this on purpose. She released it, so you can imagine the bra went end over end with these words, "I don't need that up here." So my friends, when I tell that story, they always say that you got all these darn degrees and you don't know what a bra is. I said, "What do you mean by it?" "It's an anti-gravity device." So think about it. It really is an anti-gravity device. Okay, I won't go any further on that. So pillows, mattresses, chairs are all anti-gravity device. So let's go to orbit. So you heard that, oh, I forgot this one thing. So this is one of my favorite other astronauts. Her name is Marsha Ivins. And Marsha grows her hair very long. And one of the things she does, just to irritate us on the crew, is that she unfurls her hair, and she just likes it to just kind of flow. And you can see that devilish smile that she has on her face as she does that. Now, why is that so funny? Because not only does it go back and up, but it also comes out. So if she did not take her hand and kind of push the hair back, you couldn't even see her face. And for us, trying to get to her, you're actually bumping into the hair as you get close. And of course, she smiles about that and makes us go around. And of course, I can't end talking about my extraterrestrial mission without sharing with you a photo of me being a physician on orbit. So I just mentioned a few things that happened to us on orbit, and this is me examining one of our crew members, looking at his reflexes. I'm wearing a stethoscope, and of course we're in the medical lab there. Now all of this, all of the work that we've been doing for the last 50 years are really centering around what happens to human beings. What's the next step for us? Well, that next step really begins with the current step. Above us right now is the International Space Station with a number of different crew members from all over the world. They're there 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And I want you to think about this. Going forward in human existence, there will never be a moment when we will not have a presence in space. Just think about that. And those of you who are younger than I am, you grew up with the space program. I grew up, there was no space program. Now you're growing up with the space program. And what does that mean? That means it's going to change not only the face of what we're doing in low Earth orbit, but what we're doing here on Earth. Here's another view of the International Space Station. Look at all those stars. And I love this scene. This is actually the atmosphere. That's how thin the atmosphere from on orbit. So what does the future hold? The future holds the fact that we're going to grow the International Space Station. It's going to be turned over to a commercial entity, and there are going to be more than just one. The future holds that we're going to go back to the moon, and this time not just to plant, a flag and leave footprints, but actually we'll have habitat modules. And the first mission, called Artemis, actually launches in a couple of days. So stay tuned. And this time, the other difference too, it won't be just white guys. It's going to be a multinational crew, and there will be men and women that will be part of that crew, and I'm excited. I think that will become the launch pad for going to Mars. So that's in orbit. That's what we're doing now. On orbit, we're also going to have several ways in which to get into orbit. We've got the Blue Horizon, we've got Blue Origin, we've got Boeing. All of these will allow us to have now multiple ways to get to low Earth orbit and to serve those platforms. Now, why is that important? Because we are in the midst, at the beginning stages, of developing a new industrial revolution. That new industrial revolution is going to center around space. There will be a whole ecosystem centered around low Earth orbit. And so, as you'll get after I go through a number of my slides, we have to make sure that our kids are prepared for that future. So that's on orbit. What's happening here on Earth? Well, I put a bunch of logos up here just to remind you that even in old industries where we think technology is not important, like ExxonMobil or Raytheon Technologies or Microsoft, technology is involved in everything that we do. That's now. What about the future? So take a look at some of the things here that some of which you've already heard. Disruptive technology, cognitive learning, exponential innovation, blockchain, quantum computing, telemedicine, smart manufacturing. All of those things are happening and being developed as I speak and as you're listening to me today. And here is the clincher, the high point that I want to outline. The clincher here, that 9 out of the 10 jobs of the future have not even been invented yet. And just think about that. Some of the speakers have already talked about that. We need to be thinking about how we educate our kids for the jobs of the future. So it's not just the basic math and science, but helping them become critical thinkers, and how can they consume data and turn that into innovation. This is how important the work that you're doing is. So here's a question that I have for you. And can we turn the lights up if we could? Because I want to see this show of hands. Great. So, by a show of hands, how many of you think that we are prepared for this future? Raise your hands. Wow.
It's a lot of hands.
Okay, that's telling. So I won't even have to ask the other question then. So I'm glad to see that you have, most of you did raise your hands on that, because you realize what the issue is, what the problem is that we have not only in this country, but in this world. And so we got to make a significant change if we're going to make a difference. So about 2008 or so, there was a seminal study done by the National Academies where it looked at what was going to happen in the future, 10, 15 years ahead. And they came up with a study around rising above the gathering storm. That gathering storm was the fact that our kids are not being educated in the fields that are relevant for the 21st century. I'm not going to read all these, but some of those things are that math and science is going to be critical in our ability to succeed, that we need to have a highly skilled workforce. Remember that 9 out of 10 jobs haven't been invented yet? That underscores that we need to look at our educational outcomes, and more importantly, we need to make sure that we have strong subject matter for our children, and to make sure that you have the ability to teach them and prepare them for the future. So it was mentioned during my introduction that I was on the founding board of the National Math and Science Initiative. And one of the things that we want to do is our vision is to transform the face of STEM. And what I mean by that. So on one hand, and this is the hand I'm talking to the group now, it is to make sure that the students that you're teaching represent the demographics of this nation. That all our communities and all the students, no matter what their ethnic background is, can have high quality STEM education available to them. The second aspect of this vision is transforming the occupations and those who are involved in occupations in STEM. So if you look at the jobs now, you'll find out that minorities, black, white, brown, or black and brown and indigenous populations are not in those jobs, are not in those fields. So when we talk about transforming the face of STEM, it is making sure that education is available for them, at the same time that they get prepared and that they're going to be in those jobs of the future. So this vision fits with our mission, that not only do we want to provide this for all students, including white students, but those particularly further from opportunity. So that's what we are focused on as an organization. And we want to eradicate STEM deserts, because there are many places around this country where there is no STEM education. There may not be a chemistry teacher or a biology teacher. And so we have to change that. And so that's our mission, is to eradicate those deserts, because we believe that STEM education is the greatest lever. So, just by way of commercial, we do a lot of different things, starting from early exposure, pre-K, all the way up into high school. We're one of the largest providers of AP. We're involved in a lot of STEM education and professional development. Laying the Foundation is one of our programs. And you can see the numbers of the impact that we've had, including here in New York City. And we're not only involved in training, we're involved in following these young people. Where do they go? And so this is just a glimpse of a longitudinal study that we published just recently, which shows that our kids who go through our programs will matriculate or go into college at a much higher rate than normal, and that they will actually matriculate through college at a higher rate than they go into STEM fields. And so if you want to know more about this, you can go to NIMSI.org, and we actually have this posted. So we're about